Good evening, Internet. What a fine day. Lazy day. It's didn't give much above 40 today. Didn't really feel like going outside and doing anything. It's a lazy day. And those are okay to have once in a while. Just don't want to make a habit of it. That's kind of what happened during the pandemic, though, isn't it? It's lazy day after lazy day, and got out of shape, and well, part of that is hips and knees and joints aren't happy. But anyway, all right, enough of my little poor little sob story. Let's plug in the sun and get on with the book. Things are starting to happen. They got to cross the desert, remember? The Truth Pond. Oh yeah, the Truth Pond. Where they possibly can get their own heads back. Wonder if they actually turned back into what they looked like when Dorothy met them, or if there's a deeper truth to them that the pond will bring it. Well, probably not. Wouldn't that be cool, though? Maybe that's another story. They now made a more careful examination of the country around them. All was fresh and beautiful after the sultriness of the desert, and the sunshine and sweet, crisp air were delightful to the wanderers. Little mounds of yellowish green were away at the right, while on the left waved a group of tall leafy trees bearing yellow blossoms that looked like tassels and pom-poms. Among the grasses carpeting the ground were pretty buttercups and cowslips and marigolds. After looking at these a moment, Dorothy said reflectively, "We must be in the country of the Winkies, for the color of that country is yellow, and you will notice that most everything here is yellow that has any color at all." "But I thought this was the land of Oz," replied the Shaggy Man, as if greatly disappointed. "So it is," she declared, "but there are 4 parts to the land of Oz. The North Country is purple, and it's the country of the Gillikins. The East Country is blue, and that's the country of the Munchkins. Down at the south is the red country of the Quadlings, and here in the west, the yellow country of the Winkies. This is the part that is ruled by the Tin Woodman, you know." "Who's he?" asked Button-Bright. "Why, he's the tin man I told you about. His name is Nick Chopper, and he has a lovely heart given him by the wonderful wizard." "Where does he live?" asked the boy. "The wizard? Oh, he lives in the Emerald City, which is just in the middle of Oz, where the corners of the 4 countries meet." "Oh," said Button-Bright, puzzled by this explanation. "We must be some distance from the Emerald City," remarked the Shaggy Man. "That's true," she replied. "So we'd better start on and see if we can find any of the Winkies. They're nice people," she continued, as the little party began walking toward the group of trees. "And I came here once with my friends, the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman and the Cowardly Lion, to fight a wicked witch who had made all the Winkies her slaves." There they are, starting off into the trees. You see. "Did you conquer her?" asked Polly. Why, I melted her with a bucket of water, and that was the end of her," replied Dorothy. "After that the people were free, you know, and they made Nick Chopper, that's the Tin Woodman, their emperor." "What's that?" asked Button-Bright. "Emperor? Oh, it's something like an alderman, I guess." "Oh," said the boy. "But I thought Princess Ozma ruled Oz," said the Shaggy Man. "So she does. She rules the Emerald City and all the 4 countries of Oz. But each country has another little ruler, not so big as Ozma. It's like the officers of an army, you see. The little rulers are all captains, and Ozma's the general." By this time they reached the trees, which stood in a perfect circle and just far enough apart so that their thick branches touched, or shook hands, as Button-Bright remarked. Under the shade of the trees they found in the center of the circle a crystal pool. Its water was still as glass. It must have been deep, too, for when Polychrome bent over it, she gave a little sigh of pleasure. "Why, it's a mirror!" she cried, for she could see all her pretty face and fluffy, rainbow-tinted gown reflected in the pool, as natural as life. Dorothy bent over, too, and began to arrange her hair, blown by the desert wind into straggling tangles. Button-Bright leaned over the edge next, and then began to cry, for the sight of his fox head frightened the poor little fellow. "I guess I won't look," remarked the Shaggy Man, sadly, for he didn't like his donkey head either. While Polly and Dorothy tried to comfort Button-Bright, the Shaggy Man sat down near the edge of the pool, where his image could not be reflected, and stared at the water thoughtfully. As he did this, he noticed a silver plate fastened to a rock just under the surface of the water, and on the silver plate was engraved these words: "The Truth Pond." "Ah!" cried the Shaggy Man, springing to his feet with eager joy. "We've found it at last!" "Found what?" asked Dorothy, running to him. "The Truth Pond. Now, at last, I may get rid of this frightful head. For we were told, you remember, that only the Truth Pond could restore me my proper face." "Me too!" shouted Button-Bright, trotting up to them. "Of course," said Dorothy. "It will cure you both of your bad heads, I guess. Isn't it lucky we found it?" There it is. The Truth Pond. I don't know if you can read that. Camera focus. Nah, anyway. "It is indeed," replied the Shaggy Man. "I hated dreadfully to go to Princess Ozma looking like this, and she's to have a birthday celebration, too." Just then a splash startled them, for Button-Bright, in his anxiety to see the pool that would cure him, had stepped too near the edge and tumbled heels over head into the water. Down he went, out of sight entirely, so that only his sailor hat floated on the top of the Truth Pond. He soon bobbed up, and the Shaggy Man seized him by his sailor collar and dragged him to the shore, dripping and gasping for breath. They all looked upon the boy wonderingly, for the fox head with its sharp nose and pointed ears was gone, and in its place appeared the chubby round face and blue eyes and pretty curls that had belonged to Button-Bright before King Dox of Foxville transformed him. "Oh, what a darling!" cried Polly, and would have hugged the little one had he not been so wet. Their joyful exclamations made the child rub the water out of his eyes and look at his friends questioningly. "You're all right now, dear," said Dorothy. "Come and look at yourself." She led him to the pool, and although there were still a few ripples on the surface of the water, he could see his reflection plainly. "It's me," he said, in a pleased yet odd whisper. The Shaggy Man's own head is restored. It is. And we turn the page. "Of course it is," replied the girl, "and we're all glad as you are, Button-Bright." "Well," announced the Shaggy Man, "it's my turn next." He took off his shaggy coat and laid it on the grass and dived headfirst into the Truth Pond. When he came up, the donkey head had disappeared, and the Shaggy Man's own shaggy head was in its place, with the water dripping in little streams from his shaggy whiskers. He scrambled ashore and shook himself to get off some of the wet, and then leaned over the pool to look admiringly at his reflected face. There he is. And back to the Shaggy Man, not the Shaggy Man with the donkey head. "I may not be strictly beautiful, even now," he said to his companions, who watched him with smiling faces, "but I'm so much handsomer than any donkey that I feel as proud as I can be." "You're all right, Shaggy Man," declared Dorothy, "and Button-Bright is all right, too. So let's thank the Truth Pond for being so nice and start on our journey to the Emerald City." "I hate to leave it," murmured the Shaggy Man with a sigh. "A Truth Pond wouldn't be a bad thing to carry around with us." But he put on his coat and started with the others in search of someone to direct them on their way. Tick-Tock and Billina. They had not walked far across the flower-strewn meadows when they came upon a fine road leading toward the northwest and winding gracefully among the pretty yellow hills. "That way," said Dorothy, "must be the direction of the Emerald City. We'd better follow the road until we meet someone or come to a house." The sun soon dried Button-Bright's sailor suit and the Shaggy Man's shaggy clothes, and so pleased were they at regaining their own heads that they did not mind at all the brief discomfort of getting wet. "It's good to be able to whistle again," remarked the Shaggy Man, "for those donkey lips were so thick I could not whistle a note with them." He warbled a tune as merrily as any bird. "You'll look more natural at the birthday celebration, too," said Dorothy, happy in seeing her friends so happy. Polychrome was dancing ahead in her usual sprightly manner, whirling gaily along the smooth, level roads until she passed from sight around the curve of one of the mounds. Suddenly they heard her exclaim, "Oh!" and she appeared again, running toward them at full speed. "What's the matter, Polly?" asked Dorothy, perplexed. There was no need for the Rainbow's Daughter to answer, for turning the bend in the road there came advancing slowly toward them a funny round man made of burnished copper, gleaming brightly in the sun. Perched on the copper man's shoulder sat a yellow hen, with fluffy feathers and a pearl necklace around her throat. "Oh, Tick-Tock!" cried Dorothy, running forward. When she came to him, the copper man lifted the little girl in his copper arms and kissed her cheek with his copper lips. "Oh, Billina!" cried Dorothy in a glad voice, and the yellow hen flew to her arms to be hugged and petted by turns. The others were curiously crowding around the group, and the girl said to them, "It's Tick-Tock and Billina, and oh, I'm so glad to see them again." "Welcome to Oz," said the copper man in a monotonous voice. And there's a Tick-Tock and the hen, Billina, on his shoulder. Dorothy sat right down in the road, the yellow hen in her arms, and began to stroke Billina's back. Said the hen, "Dorothy, dear, I've some wonderful news to tell you." "Tell it quick, Billina," said the girl. Just then Toto, who had been growling to himself in a cross way, gave a sharp bark and flew at the yellow hen, who ruffled her feathers and let out such an angry screech that Dorothy was startled. "Stop, Toto! Stop that this minute!" she commanded. "Can't you see that Billina is my friend?" In spite of this warning, had she not grabbed Toto quickly by the neck, the little dog would have done the yellow hen a mischief, and even now he struggled madly to escape Dorothy's grasp. She slapped his ears once or twice and told him to behave, and the yellow hen flew to Tick-Tock's shoulder again, where she was safe. "What a brute!" croaked Billina, glaring down at the little dog. "Toto isn't a brute," replied Dorothy, "but at home Uncle Henry has to whip him sometimes for chasing the chickens. Now, look here, Toto," she added, holding up her finger and speaking sternly to him. "You've got to understand that Billina is one of my dearest friends and mustn't be hurt, now or ever." Toto wagged his tail as if he understood. "The miserable thing can't talk," said Billina with a sneer. "Yes, he can," replied Dorothy. "He talks with his tail, and I know everything he says. If you could wag your tail, Billina, you wouldn't need words to talk with." "Nonsense," said Billina. "It isn't nonsense at all. Just now Toto says he's sorry and that he'll try to love you for my sake. Don't you, Toto?" "Bow wow," said Toto, wagging his tail again. "But I've such wonderful news for you, Dorothy," cried the yellow hen. "Wait a minute, dear," interrupted the little girl. "I've got to introduce you all first. That's manners, Billina. This," turning to her traveling companions, "is Mr. Tick-Tock, who works by machinery, 'cause his thoughts wind up, and his talks wind up, and his action winds up, like a clock." "Do they all wind up together?" asked the Shaggy Man. "No, each one's separate, but he works just lovely, and Tick-Tock is a good friend to me once, and saved my life, and Billina's life, too." "Is he alive?" asked Button-Bright, looking hard at the Copper Man. "Oh, no, but his machinery makes him just as good as alive." She turned to the Copper Man and said politely, "Mr. Tick-Tock, these are my new friends, the Shaggy Man, and Polly the Rainbow's daughter, and Button-Bright, and Toto. Only Toto isn't a new friend, 'cause he's been to Oz before." The Copper Man bowed low, removing his copper hat as he did so. "I'm very pleased to meet Dorothy's Here he stopped short. "Oh, I guess his speech needs winding," said the little girl, running behind the Copper Man to get the key off a hook at his back. She wound him up at a place right under his right arm and he went on to say, "Pardon me for running down. I was about to say I am pleased to meet Dorothy's friends, who must be my friends." The words were somewhat jerky, but plain to understand. "And this is Billina," continued Dorothy, introducing the yellow hen, and they all bowed to her in turn. "I've such wonderful news," said the hen, turning her head so that one bright eye looked full at Dorothy. "What is it, dear?" asked the girl. "I've hatched out 10 of the loveliest chicks you ever saw." "Oh, how nice! And where are they, Billina?" "I left them at home, but they're beauties, I assure you, and all wonderfully clever. I've named them Dorothy." "Which one?" asked the girl. All of them, replied Billina. That's funny. Why did you name them all with the same name? It was so hard to tell them apart, explained the hen. Now when I call Dorothy, they all come running to me in a bunch. It's much easier, after all, than having a separate name for each. Well, isn't that clever? That's probably true. I'm just dying to see 'em, Billina, said Dorothy eagerly. But tell me, my friends, how did you happen to be here in the country of the Winkies, the first of all to meet us? I'll tell you, answered Tick-Tock in his monotonous voice, all the sounds of his words beginning on one level. Princess Ozma saw you in her magic picture and knew you were coming here, so she sent Billina and me to welcome you, as she could not come herself, so that Fizzadiggle Cumsolating Hyber Gobble into Zibic. Good gracious! Whatever's the matter now? Cried Dorothy, as the Copper Man continued to babble these unmeaning words, which no one could understand at all because they made no sense. Don't know, said Button-Bright, who was half scared. Polly whirled away to a distance and turned to look at the Copper Man in a fright. His thoughts have run down this time, remarked Billina composedly, as she sat on Tick-Tock's shoulder and pruned her sleek feathers. When he can't think, he can't talk properly, any more than you can. You'll have to wind up his thoughts, Dorothy, or else I'll have to finish his story myself. Dorothy ran around and got the key again and wound up Tick-Tock under his left arm, after which he could speak plainly again. Pardon me, he said, but when my thoughts run down, my speech has no meaning, for words are formed only by thought. I was about to say that Ozma sent us to welcome you and invite you to come straight to the Emerald City. She was too busy to come herself, for she is preparing for her birthday celebration, which is to be a grand affair. I've heard of it, said Dorothy, and I'm glad we've come in time to attend. Is it far from here to the Emerald City? Not very far, answered Tick-Tock, and we have plenty of time. Tonight we will stop at the palace of the Tin Woodman, and tomorrow night we will arrive at the Emerald City. Goody, cried Dorothy. I'd like to see dear Nick Chopper again. How's his heart? It's fine, said Billina. The Tin Woodman says it gets softer and kindlier every day. He's waiting at his castle to welcome you, Dorothy, but he couldn't come with us because he is getting polished as bright as possible for Ozma's party. Well then, said Dorothy, let's start on and we can talk more as we go. They proceeded on their journey in a friendly group, for Polychrome had discovered that the Copper Man was harmless and was no longer afraid of him. Button-Bright was also reassured and took quite a fancy to Tick-Tock. He wanted the Clockwork Man to open himself so that he might see the wheels go round, but that was a thing Tick-Tock could not do. Button-Bright then wanted to wind up the Copper Man, and Dorothy promised he should do so as soon as any part of the machinery ran down. This pleased Button-Bright, who held fast to one of Tick-Tock's Copper's hands as he trudged along the road, while Dorothy walked on the other side of her old friend, and Billina perched by turns upon his shoulder or his copper hat. Polly once more joyously danced ahead, and Toto ran after her, barking with glee. The Shaggy Man was left to walk behind, but he didn't seem to mind that a bit, and whistled merrily or looked curiously upon the pretty scenes they passed. At last they came to a hilltop from which the tin castle of Nick Chopper could plainly be seen, its towers glistening magnificently under the rays of the declining sun. "How pretty!" exclaimed Dorothy. "I've never seen the Emperor's new house before." "He built it because the old castle was damp and likely to rust his tin body," said Billina. "All those towers and steeples and domes and gables took a lot of tin, as you can see." "Is it a toy?" asked Button-Bright softly. "No, dear," answered Dorothy. "It's better than that. It's a fairy dwelling of a fairy prince." There it is. You can see them looking at it from a hilltop. Whoops. One page at a time. Oh, the next chapter. The Emperor's. Oh, we get to take a tour of the castle. The Tin Chopper, Nick Chopper's castle. The next time. Excuse me. Spring is a coming, and the sinuses will be a running. The pollen, the trees are mating. Lots of pollen in the air. But we're going to have a garden this year. The above ground pool that used to be out back has been sacrificed, and it needed a new liner, and it needed a new pool, really, because the metal was all rusty and nasty, and the liner the rim around the top of it to hold the liner was no good anymore, really. So instead of all that, we're gonna plant gardens back there. We'll do the above ground gardening thing and put some watering contraptions of some sort in there, and have our own veggies and flowers and all kinds of goodies. That'll be neat. That's another video. Maybe Kickback Crochet and I will do a collaboration, and we'll both share the video of how we're setting up the garden. That sounds fun. So there you go. Something to look forward to. We got plans. We got stuff going on. We're old and things keep feeling like they're gonna break, but we keep going anyway. That's what life is. Just keep it going. Okay? Now go to bed. Have sweet dreams.